The storm had not let up since Jarek had first set foot on the rocky path, its fury an omen he could not ignore. Winds howled through the cliffs, biting at his face as he trudged forward, each step a defiance of nature itself. The sky above, a tumult of dark clouds, matched the turmoil inside his chest, the grief and anger that had been building for years. His father's voice echoed in his mind, the words of wisdom now a bitter memory. Jarek had spent his life chasing vengeance, and today he would finally confront the ones who destroyed his family. As he neared the cliff's edge, the roaring sea below seemed like an extension of his soul, wild, untamed, and yearning for release. "They will pay," he muttered, his voice carried away by the wind. The weight of the sword at his side felt heavier now, but he welcomed it. The final battle was upon him. Nothing would stop him from claiming what was owed. He was ready to face them. He was ready to end it. As Jarek descended from the cliff, the rain began to ease, though the air remained heavy with the aftermath of the storm. The path below him was narrow, winding through jagged rocks. His breath came out in short bursts, the chill of the night seeping into his bones, but the fire of vengeance burned hotter than the cold could chill him. His enemies were close. The final confrontation was near. He could almost feel the weight of their presence, the ones who had stolen everything from him. As he made his way deeper into the rocky valley, the image of his father flashed before his eyes, his mother's soft laugh ringing in his ears. For them, he whispered to himself, his resolve firming with each step. "I'll make sure they never hurt anyone again." The valley stretched before him, its harsh beauty a stark contrast to the fury building inside him. He was almost there, and soon the last piece of his vengeance would fall into place. The valley grew steeper as Jarek descended further, the sounds of the storm now replaced by the haunting silence of the land. The air felt thick, and every step he took seemed to echo against the stone walls that surrounded him. His heart pounded in his chest, and the weight of his sword felt heavier with each passing moment. As he reached the bottom of the valley, he saw it, the camp where his enemies had made their home. The firelight flickered weakly against the growing darkness, casting long shadows that danced across the stone. Jarek paused, taking in the sight. His breath caught in his throat. This was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The faces of his family appeared in his mind again, their voices urging him forward. "This ends now," he whispered, gripping his sword tighter. He could already hear their voices, the laughter of his enemies, unaware of the storm that was about to descend upon them. He was ready. With a final, steadying breath, Jarek moved toward the camp, his steps deliberate and quiet, as if the land itself was holding its breath in anticipation. The closer he got, the more the firelight illuminated the faces of his enemies, his father's murderer among them, sitting carelessly around the fire, unaware of his approach. The rage inside Jarek flared again, hotter than the fire burning in front of them. His grip tightened on the hilt of his sword, the metallic coldness of it grounding him. But he didn't act yet. Not yet. He needed them to be closer. The moment of reckoning was near, and he would make them regret the day they ever crossed him. His enemies continued to laugh, unaware of the fate that was rushing toward them. Jarek's breathing slowed, his body coiling with the tension of what was to come. "You will pay for what you've done," he thought, his mind set. "This will be your end." Without warning, Jarek sprang into action, his sword drawn in one fluid motion. The camp erupted in chaos as his first strike landed with deadly accuracy, cutting down the nearest guard before he could even draw his weapon. The others scrambled to react, but Jarek was already upon them, a blur of motion, swift and brutal. His blade cleaved through the air, striking with precision as he moved like a force of nature. There was no hesitation, no mercy, only the cold calculation of revenge. "You took everything," he growled as he fought, each strike fueled by the faces of those he had lost. The camp was in disarray, men shouting and scrambling for weapons. The firelight flickered wildly, casting chaotic shadows, as Jarek cut down anyone who dared to stand in his way. It was too late for them to escape. This was the moment he had dreamed of, and now it was happening. The aftermath of the battle was silent, save for the crackling of the dying fire. Jarek stood in the center of the camp, his sword still dripping with blood, his body covered in sweat and rain. The men who had once terrorized his family were now lifeless around him, but there was no satisfaction in their deaths. Jarek looked down at the bodies, his chest heaving with exhaustion, and for the first time, a deep sense of emptiness washed over him. The revenge he had sought for so long was now fulfilled, but it had left him hollow. His family's murders still haunted him, and he could feel their presence in the cold night air, their spirits lingering. The rage that had driven him to this point had burned out, leaving a void. Is this truly the end? Jarek thought, his grip on the sword tightening. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Something beyond vengeance. The fire flickered one last time, casting a brief light over the fallen men. Jarek walked away from the camp, his boots crunching on the gravel path, leaving the dead behind him. His thoughts were a jumble of conflicting emotions: satisfaction, grief, and uncertainty. The valley stretched out before him, the path winding deeper into the unknown. There was no more fighting to be done, no more enemies left to face. But even as he moved farther from the bloodshed, the memories of his family haunted him. The faces of his father and mother, their laughter now distant echoes, filled his mind. "I avenged you," Jarek whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "But I'm still lost." The path ahead was uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure: his journey was far from over. The vengeance that had fueled him for so long was just a part of something bigger, a greater battle perhaps. And Jarek was determined to see it through, even if he had no idea where it would lead. The days passed in a blur, each one blending into the next. Jarek found himself wandering through barren landscapes, mountains, forests, valleys, drifting from place to place, without a true purpose. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, the silence in his heart deafening. He had avenged his family, but what now? What was he supposed to do with this power, this resolve that had driven him to kill? The world seemed distant, indifferent to his pain. At night, the memories of his family would come alive in his dreams, but they were always just out of reach, like ghosts that vanished the moment he tried to hold them. One evening, as he camped by a quiet river, the reflection of the stars on the water caught his eye. For a brief moment it felt like a sign, a glimpse of hope in the darkness. But the moment passed as quickly as it came, leaving Jarek with more questions than answers. Jarek awoke to the sound of distant voices, a low murmur, like a warning on the wind. He rose quickly, his instincts sharp as he scanned the area. From the shadows, figures emerged, their forms cloaked and moving with purpose. The woman leading them stepped forward, her eyes scanning the horizon before settling on Jarek. "You're a hard man to find," she said, her voice calm but carrying an edge of authority. Jarek's hand moved instinctively to the hilt of his sword, but the woman held up a hand, signaling for him to lower it. "We're not your enemies," she continued. "At least, not yet." Her gaze never wavered from his, and Jarek could feel the weight of her words. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low, filled with suspicion. The woman smiled faintly, but her eyes remained serious. "We are the ones who can help you," she said. "And we know who you're looking for." Jarek's brow furrowed. "What do you know about me?" Jarek stood before the woman and her group, his mind racing. They had approached him in the dead of night, offering something he had not expected: help. He had never been one to trust strangers, especially not ones who claimed to know about his family's death. But something about their presence, their calm demeanor, made him hesitate. The woman's words echoed in his mind. "We know who you're looking for." Who were they, really? And how did they know what he sought? The woman stepped forward, her eyes steady and unwavering. "You're searching for more than revenge, Jarek," she said, her voice almost gentle. "You're searching for purpose." Jarek's gaze hardened. "Purpose?" he repeated, a bitter edge in his voice. "What do you know about purpose?" The woman's face softened. "We can guide you, help you find the strength to face what lies ahead. You don't have to do this alone." Jarek felt a surge of conflicting emotions, but deep down he knew the path he had been walking was leading nowhere. "Show me," he said, his voice quiet but determined. The woman led Jarek deeper into the forest, her pace steady as she navigated the winding path with ease. Jarek followed, his mind still swirling with questions, but the presence of the group was calming in some strange way. The further they traveled, the more Jarek felt as if he were stepping into a world completely different from his own, a world he never knew existed. The forest grew denser, and the air seemed to hum with energy. The woman turned to him. "You've been driven by vengeance for so long, but there's a greater purpose for you, Jarek. A cause that's larger than what you've been chasing." Jarek's brow furrowed. "What cause?" he asked, his voice filled with skepticism. The woman's eyes shone with something ancient. "The fate of many depends on what you do next. There are forces in this world that seek to destroy what remains of the light. You are the one chosen to stand against them." Jarek shook his head. "I didn't ask for any of this." The woman nodded. "No one ever does. But the time has come for you to decide what kind of man you will be." The group stopped in a clearing, and Jarek felt the weight of the silence around him. The woman turned to him. "This is where it begins." She gestured to a stone altar in the center of the clearing, its surface etched with runes Jarek did not recognize. He stepped forward cautiously, his gaze fixed on the altar. "What is this place?" he asked. The woman's face grew serious. "This is the heart of the world, Jarek. It is where the ancient powers are stored, where the balance of life and death is maintained." Jarek stepped closer, his eyes scanning the runes on the stone. "And what does this have to do with me?" The woman's expression softened. "You've been chosen to restore that balance, the forces you've been seeking to fight. Those that killed your family, they are not just men. They are part of a larger darkness that threatens to engulf the world." Jarek clenched his fists. "What do I have to do?" he demanded. The woman looked at him with a mixture of sorrow and hope. "You must take what is offered to you here. The power to change the world, Jarek." Jarek's hands shook as he stepped forward to touch the stone altar. The moment his fingers made contact, a surge of energy coursed through his body, like lightning racing through his veins. He stumbled back, gasping for air, his heart pounding in his chest. The woman stepped forward quickly, her expression full of concern. "You must control it, Jarek," she said urgently. "The power you've touched is not something to be taken lightly." Jarek took a shaky breath, his head spinning. "What was that?" he asked, his voice strained. The woman placed a hand on his shoulder. "That was the power of the Ancient Ones, the energy that binds this world together. It's been waiting for you to claim it, but it's not without cost. You must learn to control it, or it will consume you." Jarek staggered to his feet, his eyes wide. "What do I do now?" The woman's eyes were filled with both fear and pride. "You train, you prepare, you face what comes next." Jarek spent the next few days training, the weight of the power within him growing heavier each day. His body ached, and his mind was constantly filled with flashes of images, visions of battles, of the people he needed to protect, and of the darkness that threatened to consume them all. He struggled to control the power, but it was like trying to hold on to a wild storm. The woman guided him through the training, her patience unwavering. One morning, as the sun broke through the trees, Jarek finally felt the shift. He closed his eyes, focusing on the energy inside him, willing it to calm. Slowly, the storm within him quieted, and for the first time he felt control. The power was no longer a threat. It was a tool. "I'm ready," Jarek said, his voice filled with certainty. The woman nodded. "Then we move forward. The time to confront the darkness has come." The journey to the heart of the darkness was long and fraught with dangers. Jarek and the woman moved swiftly, their destination clear, but the road was far from easy. They crossed dense forests and barren fields, the tension between them palpable. Jarek's mind was focused, and his training had sharpened his senses, but doubts still lingered in his heart. Every step toward the enemy's lair felt like a step into the unknown, and as they neared the ancient stronghold, the air grew thick with an oppressive energy. The world around them felt wrong, unnatural, as if the very land was under the control of something darker. "We're close," the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But you need to prepare yourself, Jarek. The darkness you're about to face isn't like anything you've encountered before." Jarek nodded, his grip tightening on his sword. "I'm ready," he said, though the uncertainty in his voice betrayed him. The time to end this was near, and he would not falter. As they approached the stronghold, the landscape around them grew even more foreboding. The fortress, built into the side of a mountain, loomed like a dark shadow in the distance, its towering walls imposing and cold. Jarek's heart raced as they drew closer, the weight of the coming battle pressing on him. This was the place where his vengeance would reach its climax. The woman stopped, turning to face him. "We cannot do this alone," she said, her voice heavy with meaning. "There are others who fight this darkness, who have fought for centuries. You must seek them out. They will guide you in your final steps." Jarek looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She placed a hand on his shoulder. "There is a greater war to fight, Jarek, and you, with the power you now possess, are part of it. But first you must make your choice." Jarek paused, his mind racing. He had come for vengeance, but now he saw that his path was much larger than he had ever imagined. Jarek had no choice but to continue, though the weight of his decision pressed heavily on him. The woman had told him to seek out allies, but where could he find them? He had spent so long fighting alone, trusting no one. But now, it seemed that he would need to put his trust in others, in forces greater than himself. As they neared the gates of the fortress, they encountered their first sign of resistance. Figures clad in dark armor appeared from the shadows, their faces obscured. The woman raised her hand, signaling Jarek to stop. "They are the guardians of this place," she explained. "They won't let anyone pass without a fight." Jarek unsheathed his sword, ready for the confrontation. The air crackled with tension, and the sound of distant thunder rumbled overhead. The battle was about to begin, and Jarek's heart raced with anticipation. His journey had led him here, to this moment. There was no turning back now. The battle erupted without warning. Jarek and the woman fought side by side, their movements synchronized as they dispatched the dark guardians with ruthless precision. Jarek's sword flashed through the air, each strike landing with deadly accuracy. The power he had unlocked within himself now flowed like a river, guiding his every movement. But the guardians were relentless, their skill matching his own. As the last of the guardians fell, Jarek took a moment to catch his breath, his chest heaving with exertion. "There will be more," the woman warned, her eyes scanning the horizon. This was only the beginning. Jarek nodded, wiping the sweat from his brow. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through his veins. "I didn't come this far to turn back now." They stood together, facing the fortress, knowing that the true battle was still ahead. Jarek stood at the gates of the fortress, the heavy wooden doors looming before him, their dark metal studs glinting in the pale light. The battle with the guardians had been fierce, but it was only the beginning. With every step he took, the weight of his mission pressed down on him. He had come for vengeance, for justice, but now, as the gates of the stronghold opened before him, he realized there was more at stake than his own desire for retribution. The woman had spoken of greater forces, an ancient power that sought to consume the world. As he stepped into the shadow of the fortress, the air grew thick with tension, the oppressive energy of the place seeping into his bones. He could feel the weight of the evil that resided within. "This is it," he thought, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "I've come this far. I won't stop now." The fortress loomed like a dark monolith, and Jarek was about to face whatever horrors lay inside. The interior of the fortress was just as oppressive as its exterior, with stone corridors leading deeper into its heart. Jarek's footsteps echoed through the silence, and his every sense was on high alert. The air was thick, carrying a stale, metallic scent. It was a place of death, of darkness, where the light seemed to struggle against the shadows. As they ventured deeper, the woman spoke in a hushed voice. "The source of the darkness is here, Jarek. We must find it before it consumes everything." Jarek nodded, his grip tightening on his sword. He could feel the weight of the power inside the walls, a dark presence that seemed to pulse with each breath he took. The deeper they went, the more the air thickened, as if the fortress itself was alive, watching them. "We need to hurry," Jarek said, his voice low, though his heart pounded with anticipation. "Time is running out." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and the air seemed to ripple with an unnatural energy. A low growl echoed from the depths of the fortress, sending a chill down Jarek's spine. The woman stopped, raising her hand to signal him to be silent. "They are close," she whispered. "The guardians of the dark power, they will try to stop us." Jarek's eyes narrowed, and he drew his sword. "Then let them try," he said, his voice low and steady. The air thickened, and Jarek could feel the presence of something immense just beyond the walls. He could hear the scratching of claws on stone, the faint sound of growling getting closer. "Whatever this is," Jarek said, his grip tightening, "I'm ready." The woman nodded, her expression grim. "We will face it together." They braced themselves, knowing that the final battle for the soul of the world was imminent. "I say." The dark guardians appeared from the shadows, massive and terrifying, their eyes glowing with malevolent fire. They moved with an unnatural grace, their claws scraping against the stone floor as they approached Jarek and the woman. "So you have come to face us," the leader of the guardians hissed, his voice like the rattle of dry bones. "You are too late, the darkness is already here." Jarek stood tall, his sword ready. "It's never too late," he said, his voice unwavering. The woman stepped forward, her hands raised, and the air around her began to shimmer with power. "You don't have to do this," she said, her tone calm but firm. "There's still a chance to stop it. Stand down." The guardians laughed, a chilling sound that echoed off the stone walls. "There is no stopping it," the leader replied. "It is already too late for you." The first strike was swift and brutal, and the battle began. The battle raged on in the dimly lit chamber, the sound of clashing steel and the growl of the guardians filling the air. Jarek's sword moved with deadly precision, each strike landing with a force that shook the ground. But the guardians were relentless, their movements fast and lethal, and despite his skill, Jarek found himself pushed to his limits. The woman's magic crackled around her, a shield of light protecting her from the guardians' attacks. "Focus, Jarek," she called, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "We need to destroy their leader." Jarek nodded, his body moving almost instinctively. His every strike was guided by the power he had learned to control, but the leader of the guardians was still out of reach. The creature stood at the back of the chamber, watching them with its glowing eyes, waiting for the right moment to strike. "We need to finish this now," Jarek muttered, his voice filled with determination. "For everything we've lost." Jarek's sword found its mark again, cleaving through the chest of one of the guardians, but he knew it wasn't enough. The leader still loomed in the shadows, waiting for its moment. Jarek's breaths were labored, his body bruised and battered from the fight, but his will was unbroken. The woman, sensing his fatigue, stepped forward. "We need to draw it out," she said, her voice steady and confident. "We'll create an opening." Jarek nodded, his eyes locked on the leader. The woman raised her hands, her magic swirling in the air around her. "Come," she called, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Show yourself." The leader growled, stepping forward into the light, its massive form blocking the path. The air around them seemed to thrum with power. "This ends now," Jarek said, stepping toward the leader, his sword raised. The time for hesitation was over. The final battle had begun. Jarek and the woman fought with everything they had, their combined strength a force to be reckoned with. The leader of the Guardians was powerful, its massive form striking with speed and force that could break bones with a single blow. But Jarek was faster, his sword cutting through the air with precision. The woman's magic clashed against the creature's power, creating shockwaves that reverberated through the chamber. "Together," she said, her voice full of urgency. "We must strike as one." Jarek nodded, understanding what was at stake. With a battle cry they charged. The leader of the Guardians lunged, its claws slashing through the air, but Jarek and the woman moved in unison, striking with deadly force. With a final powerful blow, Jarek's sword pierced the creature's heart, and the leader fell with a mighty roar, its body crumpling to the ground. With the leader of the Guardians defeated, the remaining creatures fell back, their eyes wide with fear. The once oppressive energy in the room began to dissipate, the darkness lifting as the last of the Guardians retreated into the shadows. Jarek stood, panting heavily, his sword bloodied, and his body aching from the battle. The woman stepped beside him, her expression filled with both relief and concern. "It's not over," she said, her voice calm but firm. "This was only one part of the darkness. There is more to fight." Jarek nodded, wiping the sweat from his brow. "I didn't come this far to stop now," he replied, his voice filled with quiet resolve. "We finish this." The woman smiled faintly. "Then we move forward, together." Jarek looked at her, his eyes filled with understanding. The road ahead was still long, but for the first time, he felt ready for whatever came next. As they made their way out of the fortress, Jarek's mind raced. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The woman's words echoed in his mind, "There is more to fight." What lay ahead of him was still shrouded in darkness, and yet for the first time in a long while, Jarek felt a sense of purpose beyond revenge. The power he had harnessed, the lessons he had learned, had prepared him for something greater than personal vengeance. He could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he also knew that he was not alone. The woman, and the others they had yet to meet, were part of something bigger, a force that could change the fate of the world. "We fight for something more," Jarek said quietly, his voice full of resolve. "And we will not stop until it's done." The woman nodded, a faint smile on her lips. "No, Jarek, we will not." Jarek and the woman continued their journey, traveling through barren lands and desolate villages. The weight of their mission pressed down on them with every step. Jarek had no illusions about the road ahead. The battle they had fought in the fortress was only one part of the greater war that lay before them. But with each passing day, his resolve grew stronger. They had come too far to turn back now. As they passed through a small village, its inhabitants watched them warily from behind their doors and windows. The fear in their eyes was palpable. "The darkness is spreading," Jarek muttered, his gaze sweeping over the frightened villagers. "We have to stop it before it consumes everything." The woman nodded, her expression serious. "The time for secrecy is over. We must gather the others, those who still fight for the light." Jarek clenched his fists. "Then we'll find them. And we'll fight together." As they traveled further into the heart of the land, Jarek began to feel the pull of a greater power. The earth beneath his feet seemed to hum with energy, a reminder of the forces at work in the world. The woman, too, felt the change in the air, the shift in the atmosphere that signaled the coming storm. "We're getting close," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "I can feel it." Jarek's gaze was steady, though his mind raced with the gravity of their mission. The darkness that had been building for years was now ready to be unleashed. The woman's words echoed in his mind, "We must find those who still fight for the light." He had come this far alone, but now, the thought of fighting alongside others filled him with a new sense of hope. "We'll find them," he said with resolve. "And we'll end this darkness once and for all." They arrived at an old hidden sanctuary, an ancient place where the last remnants of the resistance had gathered. The doors to the sanctuary were made of dark wood, etched with symbols Jarek did not recognize. The woman placed her hand on the door, and it opened slowly, as if by its own will. Inside, a group of men and women stood, their faces worn with the years of struggle, but their eyes still bright with the fire of defiance. "You've come," one of the elders said, stepping forward. "We've been waiting for you." Jarek's heart pounded in his chest as he stepped into the sanctuary, his eyes scanning the group. These were the people he had come to find, the last of the resistance. "We've been fighting for years," the elder continued. "But it is only with you that we can truly turn the tide. The darkness grows stronger, but together we can face it." The elder gathered the resistance members around a large stone table, A map of the land spread out before them. "The darkness has many faces," he said, pointing to various locations marked on the map. "Its influence spreads like a shadow, seeping into the hearts of the people, corrupting everything it touches." Jarek leaned forward, studying the map. "Where do we strike first?" he asked. The elder's finger hovered over a large, dark region on the map. "Here," he said. "The heart of the darkness lies in this land. If we take it, we can weaken their hold." Jarek's mind raced. This was it, the final push. The resistance had been fighting for years, but now, with the power Jarek had unlocked, they had a chance to end it. "We'll go," Jarek said, his voice steady. "We'll strike at the heart of the darkness, and we'll take it back." With the plan set, Jarek and the woman left the sanctuary, their hearts heavy with the weight of the task ahead. The resistance had given them the means to strike, and now they would face the final battle. As they made their way toward the heart of the darkness, Jarek reflected on everything that had led him to this point. The pain of his family's death, the rage that had driven him, and the lessons he had learned along the way, all of it had brought him to this moment. "We end this now," Jarek said, his voice full of resolve. The woman nodded, her expression unwavering. "Together we will bring the light back to this world." They continued down the road, the weight of the final battle heavy on their shoulders, but for the first time, Jarek felt a flicker of hope. The darkness would fall. He would make sure of it.